Welcome to Retiring Well, where it's our job to help you enjoy financial security in any economy. I'm Michael Reese, your national show host.
And in Birmingham, Alabama, I'm your Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor and Retirement Planning Specialist, Tad Hill.
And this week, we are going to talk about muni bonds. You know, municipal bonds, in our opinion anyway, are in a pretty dangerous place. We're going to talk about why that is. Also on the show, we're going to answer a viewer question, and we will wrap it up with a great story of the week and a treat from my dog, Charlie. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show.
Retiring Well with Michael Reese, providing financial security in any economy. Today is the day you can take control of your financial future and eliminate worrying about your money forever. Retiring Well with Michael Reese, featuring Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor Tad Hill, founder of Freedom Financial Group in Birmingham.
So municipal bonds are the topic of the week, and the reason for that is pretty simple. I was talking to the guys, and they had, a fella come in. Let's call him Bob. And Bob was a pretty wealthy guy. He had done really well in life, and he was coming in asking us about municipal bonds. He had already has a bunch of municipal bonds in his portfolio, and he wanted more. And he was asking our opinions on the best municipal bonds to add to his portfolio. Now, why did he want municipal bonds? The reason, of course, was they're tax-free. The earnings are tax-free, at least federally tax-free, and maybe even state tax-free, depending on the state that you have. And he was, as I said, a pretty successful guy. Had a lot of money. He was very interested in avoiding taxes. So the guys were nice enough, they were smart enough to ask him a simple question. They said, Bob, before we talk about this, why don't we just take a step back and let us ask you a question? He said, fire away. They said, so Bob, let's imagine the following scenario. Let's imagine that you had a really good friend who came to you and wanted to borrow money from you. And he was making a pretty good amount of money. He's a doctor, and he's making $745,000 a year. So he's making a ton of money. Would you be willing to lend him money? And Bob said, well, gee, he's making $745,000. I guess it depends how much he wants to borrow, but seems probably someone who's a pretty good credit risk. And so you start getting ready to maybe loan him some money there, Bob, but then you remember to ask him another question. You say, well, wait a minute, before I do this, out of curiosity, you're making $745,000. How much are you spending? Well, the guy kind of a little sheepish looked down and said, well, Bob, I'm spending $960,000. So then this, of course, took Bob aback. He said, now, wait a minute. You're earning $745,000 a year, but you're spending $960,000? And the guy says, well, yeah, that's why I need to borrow money. Well, how long is that likely going to continue? Pretty much forever. Bob, if that were the case, would you lend that guy money? And Bob looked at us, he's like, you got to be kidding. No way would I lend him money. Well, Bob, when you're buying municipal bonds that are based in the state of Michigan, I just described for you Michigan's finances, except add more zeros behind it. Michigan is bringing in something like $74 billion, but they're spending 96. What makes you think that's a good place to loan money to? It's not. But is Michigan the only state like that? Well, I pulled some states. This show is on a whole bunch of states throughout the country, but I pulled a few different states just out of the blue. Iowa, we're out there in Iowa. Iowa, it's the same as saying that you are earning $246,000 but spending $316,000. You're spending more money than you're making. You don't want any municipal bonds from Iowa. What about North Carolina? Earning $694,000, spending $838,000. Don't want any part of that. Alabama, earning $326,000, spending $423,000. Guess what? There's only one state in the country that's actually earning more than it's spending. That's the state of North Dakota. They're not issuing any of these muni bonds. So guess what? When you're buying muni bonds, when you're investing in muni bonds, you know what you're doing? You are lending money to a municipality in a state that is spending more than it's earning. It's the Terrible credit risk. Terrible. Yet, people are doing it all the time. Before you loan money to a state that's basically on its way to going bankrupt, take a look at it. usdebtclock.org. You can find all the information on that resource, on that website. So that's the national picture with municipal bonds. What I want to do now is throw it over to your local retirement planning specialist.
And now, featuring Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor Tad Hill.
Well, Mike, you've brought up some very good points, and you're talking about the amount of revenue that a state or a municipality brings in versus the amount of money that they're spending. And that's a key point. There are a few other things that it's very important to be aware of. So if you're watching today and you've got municipal bonds in your portfolio, it is very important that you watch this segment. There are a lot of things you need to be aware of when you're investing in municipal bonds. First is that there are two main types of bonds. There are general obligation bonds and there are revenue bonds. A general obligation bond has to be paid for out of the general budget, the general coffers of the issuer, the municipality or whoever's issuing the bond. A revenue bond is paid for by a specific project. So if you do a toll road or a municipality has to redo their sewer project like we had here in Alabama with Jefferson County, the bond is obligated by the revenue coming from that project. So if the project's revenue dries up, the bond is at a real risk of default. Now, here in Alabama, we had the largest municipal default in history when Jefferson County defaulted. So I think locally here we have a very good understanding of the risk of these things. But a lot of people are under the impression, oh well, I'm okay because muni bonds are insured, and that's actually not always the case. Sometimes they're not. So it's important to understand, is your muni bond insured? What type of bond is it? Is it a general obligation bond? Is it a revenue bond? And who's insuring it? What's the rating of the insurance agency? Along these lines, most of us are very aware of who Warren Buffett is and his company, Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway just cut the amount of insurance contracts that they have insuring municipalities in half. That's right, by 50%. So we have to be very aware of some of these risks. Now, I want to point this out. There's absolutely a risk of default. We've had big municipalities in California default. We've had it right here at home. There's a lot of talk about the potential of that happening moving forward. But I think there's a bigger risk to municipal bonds and all bond holders in particular right now, and that risk is interest rate risk. It's important to understand something. We talked about this a few weeks ago on the show about the connection between interest rates and bond prices. And here's how it works. When interest rates rise, bond prices fall. When interest rates fall, bond prices rise. So we've had a bull market in bonds for the last 30 years because interest rates have been falling for that period of time. Now we are at historically low interest rates. So my main concern for bondholders and municipal bondholders is that what are you going to do when interest rates rise? You have to have a strategy for this. A lot of times I see bonds that won't mature for 20 or 30 years because you get a higher interest rate. But if you've got long-dated bonds or mutual funds, you're at real risk of interest rates rising and you seeing your bond prices fall. If you're concerned about these questions and you want to know for yourself what's going on, how do you solve for interest rate risk, give the number on the screen a call and I will sit down with you and I will help you analyze your bond holdings. We'll see how much exposure you have to the interest rate risk and the bond bubble. We'll help you understand what needs to happen to take care of that. So give the number a call and I'm willing to sit down and spend some time with you.
Thanks, Tad. That was great information. And folks, you heard Tad just make a special offer. He told you if you call in the next 15 minutes and as long as you have $250,000 or more saved for your retirement, he is willing to waive his initial consultation fees. Folks, I can tell you this, if I were in the Birmingham area and I were in those circumstances, Tad's the guy that I would want to call. All right, coming up, we're going to have the question of the week. Hi Birmingham, Mike Reese here, and I have to tell you, I think you're very fortunate because one of the nation's top retirement planning experts is right there in your neck of the woods. It's my good friend Tad Hill. Tad and I, we get together with top financial advisors, 4 or 5 times a year anyway, just to brainstorm, figure out how we can better help you. Tad, why don't you take a moment and share with the folks how you and Freedom Financial helps people with their retirement planning in Birmingham.
Well, Mike, as you know, we're chartered retirement planning counselors. So what we do is we sit down with you and help you put together a plan to secure your retirement so you have peace of mind and can accomplish all the goals that you want during your retirement years. And it's about understanding what questions to ask and putting that plan together. So for the folks that call the 800 number, I'm willing to set aside some time on my calendar to sit down and do exactly that. Review your situation and help you know what needs to happen to secure your retirement.
Folks, call that number now. Hi, Michael Reese here, and you know what I found is in that critical period, the 5 years before retirement, all the way to the 5 years after retirement, in that 10-year period, I find that over and over again, Americans are making mistakes with their financial planning that, quite frankly, are easily avoided. And it really almost breaks my heart because if you make little mistakes in this period of time, you can have huge consequences. So in order to help you not make those mistakes, I've put together a simple website with some free videos from me to you to help you be smart about your planning. The website is called 3mistakes.com. It's the number 3 spelled out, THREE, 3mistakes.com. Why don't you go there today? Welcome back. It's time for our question of the week. This week's question comes from Shirley in Lansing. And she asked the following. She says, my broker has all my money in mutual funds. I feel like that's a lot of risk, but he says I'm well diversified. How can I tell exactly how much risk I'm taking? Well, Tad, I'm sure that you've had this question a lot of times down there in Birmingham. I have to ask you, how would you answer Shirley's question?
Well, Mike, this is a great question. And Shirley, one thing I want to point out is diversification among mutual funds typically diversifies you against one type of risk, which is business risk. That means if a particular stock or a particular bond has a problem, you're diversified against that. So if GM goes bankrupt, but you're holding Procter & Gamble and AT&T and all those sorts of things inside the mutual fund, then it protects you against that. Normally what they don't diversify against is called systemic risk, risk in the system. So if you've got a mutual fund that's invested in large cap stocks, but the stock market crashes, you're not going to be insulated from what's called systemic risk, because at that point, everything's going to go down. This is a question that I get a lot, and when people come in, one of the things that I ask them is, were you surprised by the amount of drop you had in 2008? Because what happens a lot of times is people actually have more risk than they know they have. So if we went through another market crash, do you want to see more than a 10 or a 15% downside? If you don't want to see more than that, then we have to be very careful about how much risk is actually in our portfolio. And the question is, how can you understand what that is for your circumstances? The truth is, we have an institutional Morningstar system here at Freedom Financial where we run the reports that will tell you for your exact holdings, if we went through another market crash, how much downside do you have? So ask yourself this question. If we went through another market crash, do you know exactly how much downside exposure you've got? If the answer is you don't know and you feel like you should, give the number a call and I will sit down with you and then run this report. I do require that folks have at least $250,000 saved for retirement so that we can sit down and go through this analysis. But if you're concerned about how much risk you've got and you're not sure, and you went down more than you thought you would have in 2008, and you're not sure if you're better protected, and you want to know the answer to this, you want to see this report, give us a call. I'll be willing to sit down and do this for you, for your circumstances, so that you know exactly how much risk you're taking.
Okay, studies tell us that there's a really big percentage of folks out there who don't really understand how interest rates and bond values interrelate. So in other words, if interest rates go up, what way are bond values going to go? Are bond values going to go up, or are they going to go down? Well, what if interest rates go down? Then which way do bond values go? And a lot of folks, they're not real certain about how that relationship works. Maybe you understand it, maybe you're a little uncertain. Well, good news. Today is the day you're going to learn how this works, and you're never going to forget it, because I've got a simple visual to help you understand how this works. So here's what I've got, my little handy dandy whiteboard here. We're going to talk about how interest rates and bond values correlate. So here's how it is. You remember when you were in grade school or elementary school, you probably had a playground, and in the playground you had a teeter-totter or a seesaw. You can tell I'm not a big artist, but you know, maybe you would sit down here on this end, and maybe your friend would be on this end, right? Here you guys are in your teeter-totter, and you go back and forth, right? Well, this is how interest rates and bond values work. So let's say we have interest rates here, and we have bond values there. And guess what? If interest rates go down, where are bond values going to go? They're going to go up. Well, what if interest rates go up? Where are bond values going to go? They're going to go down. This is why there's so many people out there right now that are concerned about bond values, because interest rates are as low as they can go. They can only go up from this point, which means bond values are likely going to go down. Bonds are very dangerous right now. Now, the other thing you want to know is something called duration, and that simply means that the longer term bonds, if the bonds are longer term and they're way out here, they go down further. So when interest rates rise, longer term bonds get hit harder than shorter term bonds. So there you go. That's how interest rates and bond values, that's the relationship that they have.
Let's talk about retirement income. Studies show that a large number of retirees are worried about running out of money. Broken promises from banks, Wall Street, and the folks in Washington, D.C. may have you worried about your own retirement security.
Having a predictable income stream is a key ingredient to protecting your retirement. One potential way to do that is to have your income stream based on math and not markets.
It's one more reason that now, more than ever, you need to talk to a retirement planning specialist. Why not call the number on your screen right now? We'd love to talk to you about protecting your retirement. You've worked your entire life to become financially secure so you can enjoy a comfortable retirement. But when you get there, what's next? Wall Street and the financial media flood the airwaves with information about what you should and shouldn't do. But who are they working for? Who can you trust?
For the past 17 years, I've focused on helping people just like you protect and preserve their retirement security. And during that time, I've identified 7 different lies, each with the potential to destroy the security that you've worked so hard to build. I believe that you deserve to know the truth. And so I've built a website that hosts a series of videos that's free of charge that you can watch in the comfort and safety of your own home.
You don't want to miss out on these powerful videos that shine the light of truth on what can be a confusing topic. Why don't you go there now? It's absolutely free, and you'll be glad you did. www.retirementincomelines.com. You deserve to know the truth.
Well, Birmingham, it's time for the Retirement Rescue of the Week. And this week I want to tell you about Jeff and Suzanne. Jeff and Suzanne were from Vestavia Hills, or are from Vestavia Hills, and they came in with a lot of the questions that we've talked about here today. They had a lot of municipal bonds in a non-qualified account. That means an account that's not in a 401k or not in an IRA. It was money that they had saved outside of these plans. They also had a lot of mutual funds, and they had really taken a hit in 2008. They know that the market's at all-time highs, and whereas in 2008 they were willing to ride out the crash, now they are very close to retirement. They're within a couple of years of retirement, and they're very concerned that if that happens again, they won't have the time necessary to recover from that. They realize something that's very important. Jeff and Suzanne realize that once you retire, unless you're going to inherit a bunch of money, you've amassed all the wealth you're ever going to have. So it's very important to them, and frankly, it's very important to good retirement planning in general for anybody out there, that you have strategies that are designed to protect your life savings. So one of the core tenets of good retirement planning is not to overexpose you to risk. So Jeff and Suzanne came in, they had a lot of municipal bonds, a lot of Alabama bonds, because they're both federal tax-free and state tax-free. So they wanted to avoid taxes. They really weren't thrilled with the potential of where tax rates may be going, and they wanted to protect themselves from that. But they also had a lot of mutual funds inside their IRA and 401k, and they had, again, taken a big hit, and they wanted to protect against that. So we sat down and did our retirement roadmap review, where we ran the report that I was talking about earlier and looked at exactly how much downside they had in their portfolio. And would you like to know what the answer was? I asked them, I said, when we run this report, how much are you going to be comfortable with? If we show that we go through another 2008, how much downside risk are you going to be okay with? And the answer was 10 or 15% max. We don't want to see more than that. Well, when we ran the report, their downside risk was closer to 40. It was in the high 30s, about 37%. As you may imagine, they were very concerned about this. The other thing I asked them was, why are you holding municipal bonds? And they said, well, we want to avoid the taxes. So when we went through our tax review, which is part of our retirement roadmap review, there's 5 areas of retirement planning that we cover in this review. When we went through their tax review, we found out that once they retired, they were going to actually be in a pretty low tax bracket. Now, they had amassed a good amount of money for retirement, so they had a lot of wealth. They just weren't going to be in a high tax bracket. So we uncovered that we would actually be able to generate more income from them, for them, and expose them actually to less taxation by moving those out of municipal bonds and into an actively managed account that was designed to generate interest and dividends so that they could use that as income, but it wasn't going to put them in a higher tax bracket. So when we sat down, we were able to restructure their portfolio to take advantage of where they were from a tax perspective and to help them reduce their risk. If you would like to do these same things for yourself, if you've got these same questions, give the number on a screen a call, and I'm willing to sit down with you and sit down and go through our retirement roadmap review. I do require that you've got at least $250,000 set aside for retirement, but if you've got these questions and you want my help, I'm willing to set aside time on my calendar to do that. So give this number on the screen a call, and I'll be happy to sit down with you and go through that.
Once again, great information. I'm telling you what, the numbers on the screen, if I'm you and you fit those parameters, you should be calling the number right now. So call within the next 15 minutes, get that opportunity to sit down for a free initial consultation. All right, it is time to check out, or to get a treat, if you will, from my dog, Charlie.
What can I do for you today?
I would like to raise my debt limit.
Excuse me?
My debt limit, I'd like to raise it.
Because the last time I checked, Mr. Smith, you were in serious debt.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Figure we should raise that limit.
Yeah, it says here you're $140,270 in debt.
Right. So I figured we should raise that limit to about 170,000. I just bought a 60-inch flat screen. Have you ever been to Australia?
No.
Leaving tomorrow, mate. You should check it out. Great parasailing.
Do you have some new income that I don't know about?
No, still making about 21 grand a year.
Okay. And are you still spending $38,000 a year?
If that's what it says.
So you're adding $17,000 a year in debt.
Wow, is that what it comes out to? Debt limit going up. Ding.
Have you made any cuts in your expenses?
Oh, of course, yes. My wife and I cut $380 out of our annual budget. It's $380.
Brutal.
Okay, so you're adding, okay, so you're adding $17,000 a year to your $140,000 in debt, and you cut $380.
Well, you say it like that, it makes it not sound like a lot.
Hey, maybe you should think about generating some new income, maybe a new job, maybe ask for that raise.
Oh, asking for that raise, I'm not comfortable. That's an awkward conversation. I've always been able to raise my debt limit.
Yeah, well, this is a little different.
Well, how?
We're in the middle of a recession, and your credit rating will plummet if you continue to go along this path.
I almost had it.
You don't see how bad this is, do you?
I cut my budget by $380. Are you kidding?
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. We can't help you.
Just a little like.
I'm very sorry.
My wife is going to lose it.
Been there.
I mean, $380 was bad enough. I mean, this is going to end our marriage. We stopped talking to each other for a month. The baby was totally freaked out.
Wait. You have kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sign there.
All right. Aren't kids a blessing? I mean, she's got plenty of time to deal with all this, right?
Absolutely.
Are we all set?
You're all set.
All right. Let's go, kiddo. We got to meet Mommy at the car store. Here we go. I think this is yours.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thanks. Hey.
All right, there you go, folks. Charlie just shared with you with that YouTube video why investing with the federal government is probably even more risky than investing with your state government with municipal bonds. So municipal bonds or treasury bonds, probably a good idea to avoid them altogether. All right, we're out of time for this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also want you to have a terrific weekend. Take care, everybody.